Welcome back to From the Bridge. I'm the Captain, Rick Jones, and we have a terrific show for you today. My special guest is the talented and lovely Pam Hollander, one of the real talents in our business, who recently left Allstate after an impactful career there. We cannot wait to have her share a boatload, yes, that pun was intended, of wisdom for our audience. I'll also get back up on the soapbox with a strong opinion and tell you yet another place to eat on the road with Rick. Today we offer a lot of depth, so let's head to deep water. We're glad to have you along for the cruise. Several shows ago, in fact, it was one of our shows from last season, I talked about our losing a competitive shootout for a new account. In fact, we did not even make the finals, but I reminded you all how much I learned from that experience by forcing myself to examine all we were doing and going back to the basics. The basics for any new business pitch involved is what I call the 7 C's. They are, number 1, competency. Number 2, context. Number 3, challenge. Number 4, creative. Number 5, collaboration. Number 6, communication. And finally, number 7, chemistry. We've been following that formula for the last 10 months to great success. In fact, we have added 11 new clients during this time and have not lost any old ones either. Yes, the basics really count. Starting today and for the next 6 weeks, we're going to take a broader look at each of those C's. So today, let's start with competency. Competency is always the starting point. If you can't prove you have the experience and expertise to do the job required, then there's no reason to go any further. Expertise is what you actually know how to do. I laugh at agencies that say they are experts in all things. I have to cry bullshit on that one. No agency can do everything, and that includes us. We understand where we have great expertise and where we don't. At FishBait Solutions, we are really good at strategy because that's where effective programs begin. Bob Heisner, who runs our American Heritage Division, is absolutely the best strategist I have ever known. He makes us dangerous. And we excel in ideas. Without being arrogant, that's been the calling card of my entire career. Bigger and better ideas. And our CEO, Rob Temple, is brilliant at ideas. Now, I absolutely suck at details, but we have people, and lots of them, who excel in details. Our team often says, they said, yes, Rick, you can now leave the room before you screw it up. Never have truer words been spoken. I'm not good at that, but we have people that are. We are also really good at sales because we listen very well and try to solve problems. Or as Rob says, we stitch together assets that solve these problems better than anything else you can do. We try to bring the exact correct asset or sponsorship entitlement or swim lane to the client and never try to fit a square peg into a round hole. That means sometimes you have to fold your cards if you don't have the perfect solution for a product or brand. We're in this for the long term, and we won't ever try to fool someone into something that is not great for their business. We also have great expertise in our specific verticals of our business. We focus on college sports, country music, outdoor sports like hunting, fishing, hiking, and camping, food festivals and tourism, and sacred American historic sites. We understand the fans of our verticals because we are those people. It's our lifestyles that are reflected in these activities and passion points. You see, the college football fan is also a country music fan, and he hunts and fishes and eats barbecue and stands up for the flag. The middle American fan is our sweet spot. I like to think we are fan anthropologists for these specific fan segments. We like to say we're fanthropologists. Again, without arrogance, we believe we know these fans better than any other organization. Then there is experience. We have a lot of experience because, like Farmers Insurance, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. That's right. We have a lot of gray hair, or in my case, no hair, at our agency. Our team has worked on every sporting and entertainment event in the world. We've worked with major global corporations and small businesses alike. Then there is your actual track record. Let's talk about sales success. Let me read to you what I wrote about sales in my book, Analog Advice in a Digital World. This chapter is called Show Me the Tombstones. I am often asked how I evaluate salespeople. For me, it's all about actual performance. In the classic Clint Eastwood movie Unforgiven, one of the characters, the Schofield kid, acts like a hotshot gunslinger with tales about all of his skills and his kills. At a pivotal moment in the movie, when the group is in a gunfight, he finally reveals that he has never actually shot anybody. Eastwood tells him, "You will today." If you can sell, if this is a real skill you have with a proven track record, then don't tell me how you sell. Just take me to the cemetery and show me each of your victories, each of your personal tombstones. As my mama often said, if you've done it, it ain't bragging. But the flip side is also true. If you have not done it, perhaps you should just keep your mouth shut until you have. I've never been into woulda, shoulda, coulda. I prefer did. Did is a historical fact. Did leaves a mark. We're happy to take you to our cemetery. We've sold before and will continue to sell in the future. So how are your personal and collective competencies? They are your lead dog. Let's hope you have a great lead dog. Next week, we'll examine the next C, context. My guest today is extremely competent. Pam Hollander is simply one of the most talented people I know, and she marries that competency with style and class and a great demeanor. She led Allstate's successful corporate sponsorship programs for years and is now out on her own helping other brands and organizations. Let's welcome Pam to the bridge. Pam, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I'd ask every guest to start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New York. I grew up on Long Island in Oyster Bay, New York.
That's interesting. Our guest last week, Ian Neufeld, also grew up on Long Island. And we talked about, how Long Island, I guess, was the original suburb. Post-World War II, that's where all the GIs relocated. Yeah. And I, people that haven't spent any time on Long Island don't realize what an interesting place it is. We've vacationed a couple of times on the North Shore, which is like going to a whole nother. It's like going to Europe in a lot of ways. I mean, it's still got cornfields and wineries and fishing boats and all that.
Yep.
It's everything that the Hamptons is not.
Right, exactly.
It's pretty close to the Hamptons, but it's not the Hamptons. It's really wild. So you grew up on Long Island. Where'd you go to school?
So I actually moved from Long Island when I was 12, and we moved out to Chicago.
Okay.
And so I did.
Wow, you've been there a long time now. Yes.
Been here a long time now, right? So did junior high and high school here, but then I always had that East Coast pull, and wound up going back to Syracuse for college, and I loved it. Just loved it.
Yeah, I think Syracuse is a wonderful campus, wonderful place. Obviously, we've done so much work over the years from ESPN, and it seems like every other person that works at ESPN went to Syracuse.
Yes, and I'm fortunate to be on the board of the Falk School of Sport Management, so I get to interact with these, former, the alumni who are literally, I think half of the board is ESPN. It's hysterical. Yes.
Well, I know Rick Burton's there, and Rick's an old friend, and of course David Falk is an old friend, and they've continued to do pretty amazing work in that sports management program, and obviously I'm an ACC guy, and once Syracuse joined the ACC, we've spent a lot of time up there. In the Carrier Dome, and then Jim and Julie Boeheim were good friends of ours too from the basketball coaching days, and so I've got a real warm spot in my heart also for Syracuse. Now in Chicago is I've always said Chicago is a big city with manners. It's it's a city of neighborhoods. Where in Chicago did you live?
So I live in the same town that we moved to, which I never thought I would do, Rick, but I'm in the northern suburbs called Highland Park.
Okay, love Highland Park.
It's beautiful, and never thought I'd see myself back in this town, but I gotta tell you, it is the best thing that we did. But I was also one of those crazy people who, when I did live in the city, I was doing that ridiculous reverse commute out to the suburbs for work. So we finally had to bite the bullet and make the move to the suburbs.
Well, yeah, it's. I remember when we had an office in Greektown, which is a neat community, and we would spend that time but candidly, making the commute into the city, you'd fly into O'Hare or fly into Midway, and then gridiron, gridlock all the way into the city. It was crazy, but I do love Chicago. It's one of my favorite cities, always has been, always will be. Now, did you major in marketing communications?
No,
Syracuse?
I didn't. Okay. Strangely enough, I sort of took a left turn after graduating college and went into the world of communications. I actually studied elementary education. So I graduated with a degree, able to teach. That
has served you well with the adults you have to deal with.
Well, yes, exactly, Rick. So it's not like I threw my degree away. Exactly. That's what I tried to convince my parents.
I love that.
It was not for naught. It is definitely a skill that I continue to use as a leader, as a mom, whatever it is. So I did. I graduated with an LEd degree, thinking I wanted to be a teacher. And you know what? It was the furthest thing from my mind. Although there were so many aspects of teaching, I loved to write. I loved speaking and being up in front of the room of students. So there are so many pieces of my education that I was really able to pull through into my career.
My wife went to what I would affectionately call a girls' school, and she corrects me and says it's a women's college, of course, but we would laugh at that. She went to Agnes Scott in Atlanta, and she got to her senior year, and her daddy said, this is all really good, but what are you planning to do when you get out? Because this degree doesn't, what's your job? And she quickly went back, and the last 2 semesters of her senior year got certified as a teacher, and ended up off and on teaching over 30 years. And she taught first grade, and she's been great with me when I would communicate by saying, Rick, you need to draw them a pie chart. You need to dumb this down to where they can get it. So I'm
the least common denominator, right?
It is, and I'm certain that your education led you to be able to do that. So you get out of college and you don't go teach. What do you do?
Right. So, what do I do? I went and spent the summer in Europe and backpacked across Europe and realized, maybe I should look for a job now. And it's a little hard to look for a job in teaching when it is August. So I scrapped that plan and actually wound up finding an internship job at a public relations agency. And that was the start of my career in communications. And I never looked back, and I loved it. Just loved it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a similar thing. I had been a coach, and Charlotte and I got married, and I thought I was going to go to Wake Forest and be Carl Tacey's #1 assistant, and he resigned. He quit, and I don't have a job. And fortunately, I was able to get a job at Georgia Tech, but I wasn't making any money. And my boss at Georgia Tech was a guy named Norman Airy, and he went over to Bob Cohn's agency, Cohn and Wolf, that later merged with Burson Marsteller. And Norman brought me to Cohn and Wolf there. So I that's where I started my communications business, and my business in sports marketing was at a PR firm. So you go become an intern. Was this a shop in Chicago?
It was actually in the northern suburbs. It was a small shop, but I really learned sort of like to cut my teeth on media relations. And it was just, they just put us to task in terms of it was like dialing for stories. That's all we did. And so I wrote press releases and tried to pitch them all day long. And I lasted there about 2 years. So I was an intern and then got hired on full time. So spent about a year there as an actual account executive, and then worked my way up to different agencies in the Chicago area. So I left there and went to an agency called Margie Korshak, and that's where I worked on a ton. She had a ton of entertainment clients. And so I worked on, clients from all the Broadway shows that would come to Chicago. I worked on McDonald's and did a ton of work with Michael Jordan back then, because if you recall, and now I'm going to date myself, but if you recall, McDonald's did have a burger named after Michael Jordan at the time. And we did a ton of launch for the product. I worked on his golf tournament. So that, again, got me into the world of sports early on. But again, like you, through the public relations lens. And then after that, went and worked at Burson Marsteller. So similar upbringing to you, Rick.
Harold Burson.
Oh, lovely guy.
I mean, iconic.
Was a lovely guy.
Iconic.
Yes.
A gentleman.
Yes.
Brilliant. Harold Burson, the times that I had a chance to be with him, he had this uncanny ability to make you believe that you were the most important person he talked to that day.
Yes.
I mean, amazing. This guy had talked to kings and queens and captains of industry and political figures and all that, but he would take a lowly young account executive and actually make you feel valuable. I learned from that. I learned a lot from that.
He and I don't know if he just was so brilliant at studying who he was going to be speaking with that day, and he remembered everything. So to your point, he remembered my name. He remembered the accounts I worked on. So unless someone was whispering in his ear, it doesn't matter. It made me feel very important at the time.
It was interesting because we'll segue into some of the sponsorship stuff that you did, but we recently lost Coach Bobby Bowden, and I was listening to one of his former players, Danny Cannell, on satellite radio, and Danny reminded everybody that Coach Bowden had a lot of great characteristics, but the one that wasn't so great was he never remembered anybody's name. and he said, if you weren't a starter at Florida State, he didn't know your name.
He didn't know you.
I mean, you play for him, he didn't know your name. And he said he would call everybody Buddy. So, every player he didn't know his name, Buddy. Every student, Buddy. Everybody that you moved. And I remembered we did some things with Coach Bowden over the years after he retired. Yeah. And every time I would see him, he'd say, hey, buddy, because he didn't remember my name. But here we had Harold Burson that seemed to remember everybody's name, which was pretty wild. Yeah. So how long were you at Burson?
I was at Burson for 5 years before I got a call from a recruiter saying, hey, Allstate is looking to build out their marketing department. Would you be interested in having a conversation? And I took the call.
Pam, it's interesting. Yeah. I've always felt like, and I'm not just blowing smoke, I've always felt like you understood agencies
Yes.
And now I know why.
Yeah.
Because you
Oh,
had come
Rick,
from that.
100%.
Yes.
100%. And it's really funny you say that. When I was looking to hire people also on my team, I tended to surround myself with others who also came from some kind of agency environment. And I'll tell you why, because I don't think you can teach someone client service mentality unless you've literally lived it. And even when you are, brand side, you are still serving internal clients, and you need to understand the nuances of how to do that. And I think having worked in an agency just trained me really well.
I've seen over the years very, very, very few people be able to jump from the corporate side back to the agency side had they not started at an agency.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they don't understand that you're really in a subservient role. Your
100%.
job is to serve, and even like you said, in your own internal communications department at Allstate, you were serving others.
Oh, yes.
You were an agency within the environment. Well,
I truly believe that.
Allstate's one of the great iconic companies. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess it started with Sears
It did.
years
It was born
ago,
out of
and
Sears. Yeah.
and
Named
it's,
after a tire, a radial tire was called an Allstate tire. And that's where the beginnings. And I think the first Allstate agency was like under an escalator in a Sears department store.
well, for someone that had spent so much time in Chicago, I think going to work for an iconic brand like that had to be pretty special.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Really, really proud of everything that I was able to accomplish there. No
Well,
doubt.
you did a lot of stuff. I want to, because this is about sponsorship, this podcast,
Yes.
you did a lot of great work, obviously, on the PR side to begin with, but then sponsorship fell under your wing, and y'all did some, amazing things. Number one, the nets. Who would have thought you could brand, goalpost nets, and
Right.
and they're perfect because you hit the hands. I mean,
No doubt.
are you
No
in good
doubt.
hands? I mean, if you kick it, you hit it right down the middle. You did that. You had deep activities in college football. From the entitlement of the Sugar Bowl to being a CFP. But one of the ones that I'm proud of that you fortunately bought from me was the All-State AFCA Good Works teams. And that's turned out to be a terrific program. And then during the time y'all spent it as NCAA corporate partner, you replicated that program with the NABC and the WBCA. Talk a little bit about that program, because that was really kind of the intersection of PR and calls marketing back with
100%.
sponsorship.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head, Rick. That is a program that truthfully was such a win-win-win. To be able to align a brand which literally stands for good, the good hands and doing good, and to again align that brand with student athletes who are known for doing good in their community off the field. I mean, it truly was the perfect intersection. And it's a program that just so proud of how it grew year over year over year. And when we had the ability to expand it beyond football because of our relationship with the NCAA and do it for both men's and women's college basketball athletes, I mean, it truthfully, I would point to that as one of the proudest programs that I've been affiliated with over my career, truthfully.
I can remember being at the women's Final Four one year, and Landry Jones was the All-American quarterback at Oklahoma. Yeah. He was there on behalf of his wife. He was carrying her suitcase because she was on the team. And I remember they going through all the things. I started a bone marrow foundation, or I did this and that. And I remember my wife turning to me and saying, "I'm such a failure."
Truthfully, the stories. I know the stories that these student athletes would tell and what they did, and they built. They started their own charities in third world countries, and I'm looking at my kids going, "Oh my God, what am I doing as a parent that I'm not encouraging you to do these kinds of things daily?" But these athletes were such inspirations, and their stories will forever live on. And again, to affiliate a brand with that was so important.
Well,
And we
y'all
did
also,
everything
yeah,
we could to
yeah,
make the student athletes at the center of it.
you did. And, but one of the things I liked that you did at the Sugar Bowl every year was you did a cause program. You had those
Yeah.
young
Yeah.
men actually participate, whether it was
We
cleaning
did.
up in the Ninth Ward
We
or
did.
planting
Yeah.
a garden someplace.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I loved about them is they were all not only willing to do it, they were eager to do it, which really said something
100%.
about their character.
Yes. Yes. I mean, again, we tried to pull together programming that really was at the center of what these kids were known for doing. So community service was going to be something that was very important to them and to us. And we did every year down in New Orleans, we'd pull together work with a nonprofit to do some kind of community give back service project. And the AFCA Good Works team students were so willing to help out. There were oftentimes we'd do things that we would do coaching clinics with youth. And to see these, 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds on the field, just looking up to these student athletes was just incredible. And remember, Rick, the AFCA Good Works team athletes, they ranged from, those who were Heisman Trophy winners on down to kids who you probably would never have heard of because they went to, a school that was really never known for college football, but they were being honored for all the work they did off the field. And it was a really good common denominator.
Yeah, it was a great mixture of D3 kids, but you also had some premier athletes that made that team.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. And if you think about the alumni of AFC Good Works team members, I mean, they are kind of the who's who of football.
Yeah. And Pam, while you were there, y'all had so many memorable ad campaigns around college football. I remember
well, you mentioned Bobby Bowden. We did one, around
yes.
Bobby Bowden. It was one of our
That was the Bergwood,
campaigns.
Wasn't it? Where
yes,
he was like,
exactly.
Yes, where he basically says, it's Bobby Bowden. I mean, I think he opens his door and it gets knocked off because he's jumping out to see Coach Bowden. And it was so good. And then the mayhem, the whole idea of college football is mayhem. I have a shirt that I wear regularly that I picked up at the CFP Championship in New Orleans that says football is mayhem.
Football is mayhem.
And people see that shirt all the time and they laugh because they get it. They understand.
They get it. Yes.
And what I liked, one of the key things I wanted to point out to people listening today is y'all didn't do a million different things. Y'all did a select few things and went deep and wide and added value all the time. Talk about that, because you were in a position that, as an iconic American brand, people probably felt like you were an automatic teller machine that just could buy everything. So you probably saw everything. What made college football work so well for y'all?
So there's a couple of things. And I really like that you pointed out the fact that we decided to go deep rather than broad in terms of our sponsorship portfolio. And quite honestly, that was by my design. I knew that, when it came to budgets, we couldn't really compete with the competitors in the insurance marketplace. So in order to really carve out our own white space, we needed to truly own something from top to bottom. And in order to do that, we had to leverage the heck out of every asset that we aligned with. You're right. I got bombarded with sponsorship proposals, and it was hard to figure out, sometimes where we wanted to place our bets and truly make an impact. But college football was really unique. First of all, it's a long season, right? So we could be in market for a long time. It had all of the elements we were looking for in terms of really strong media. We knew that eyeballs would be tuning in, and it had more importantly, had the right audience for us, which was not college students. It was alumni, and that's who we were trying to reach. And again, given the fact that Allstate is in every, location across the U.S., there's a college basically everywhere in the U.S. So we were able to align with those organizations. And you mentioned before about the Field Goal Net program. That was just, while it probably was the most iconic, program of what we did, it was only one piece of the relationship that we had with those universities. And so again, we did so much in market trying to align our local agents with those universities and again, take advantage of every part of those relationships that we could.
We talked about the fact that you had an agency background.
Yeah.
And that allowed you to work so effectively with your agencies. But Pam, you did something that I have admired, and I've never seen anybody else do it. You used two different agencies, one for strategy, and one for execution. And
they were in the same space,
and it's brilliant.
Yeah,
and I don't know why everybody else doesn't do it. Talk about that and how that worked for you.
It was, I wish I could say we set out by design to do that, but it sort of evolved over time. And it came down to where I felt and we felt the strengths of those agencies lied in terms of serving us as a client. Technically there were 5 agencies we worked with, and we kind of called every day are the 5 families here. And it was 2 agencies in both the sponsorship space. It was a PR agency, advertising, and media. And all 5 of those agencies, I kind of required them to take their agency hat off when they sat around the table with us. And they just became an extension of my team. And I didn't care where the good idea came from. Let's say the media agency had a really good idea, but it turned out to be something that the PR agency was then going to implement. But the use of 2 agencies in the sponsorship space really, really worked to our benefit. And I will tell you, they became colleagues of one another. And there was a very clear dividing line in terms of roles and responsibilities. So there was no conflict. There was, but they both made each other better. And I loved that time when both those agencies were working together for the benefit of the Allstate brand. It really worked well.
Well, I also think it keeps you out of those self-serving silos. A lot of times a strategy agency will recommend something because it's going to make them have bigger billings in the execution.
Right.
And that becomes a conflict of interest, and you stayed away from that. I also like the fact that you required and they acquiesced to just leave your ego at the door. When you come here,
100%.
just check it in the closet and, come on in here and be part of the team.
Yeah.
And I just admired the cohesiveness of all of that. That, I'll be honest with you, is not replicated at many places. I still find there are too many silos.
Yes.
And they're internal silos fighting for resources and fighting instead of saying, whoa, let's put everybody around the table and let's come up with the idea that works for everybody. Yeah. And if we do great work, there's going to be funds for everybody. There's going to be enough to go around.
Yeah.
But if we don't do good work, you're all going to be gone.
Truthfully, my philosophy is good ideas are going to get funded, but we got to have the good idea. And I don't care where it came from. We just need a good idea. And then we can figure out which agencies we would need to rely on for implementation.
Well, I've always said, and I've been an agency creature my whole life, there are no great agencies. There are only great clients. Clients that let you do great work, put you in a position to do great work, will listen to ideas. I've always felt like some of the biggest ideas probably make you uncomfortable when you first hear them, because they're big ideas, and then you think about them and go, that makes perfect sense to be able to do that from that standpoint. We got a few more minutes. Switch gears a little bit. I live down here in what I call God's country, down here in the low country, and you make a pilgrimage down here on a regular basis. You go to Litchfield, I do. You're down here to Pawleys in that area. Talk about what makes that place so special for you and your family.
I wish I could sum it up, Rick. First of all, it's so unlike anything that, I see and experience living in the Chicagoland area. Look, it's a combination of just the way that community and land is, and the location, and just right on the water. It's so relaxing, so spectacular, but it's also the people I'm there with, right? So yes, we've been making this pilgrimage. My family, there's 9 families, and we descend on Litchfield Beach every summer. In fact, we didn't even miss it during COVID. Some families chose not to go, but a couple of us still went, and we rent 2 houses, and it is heaven on earth, let me tell you. Just from eating the local cuisine, we sit there and, we take turns as families cooking each night, but we always stick with the low country cuisine. So the seafood is always fresh. It's so wonderful. We kayak, we fish, we crab, we paddleboard, you name it. We are enjoying every aspect of the sand and the sun and the water there.
It is a pretty special place.
Pawleys
Island was one of the first tourist destinations in America. Yeah. There were planters in the 1700s that had they fried fish. They had a club there. And the colonial era. And I love the title or the tagline for Pawleys Island. It's arrogantly shabby.
Yeah. Which so sums it up.
And I just think that is one of the great taglines.
And this little strip of land that we stay on, this Litchfield Beach strip.
Special.
Yeah, I mean, it is beautiful. And truthfully, like when we'll walk down to the point, and when it's low tide, Rick, we just walk over to Pawleys, in the middle of the ocean. Like we'll just walk over. That's how close we were.
Yeah, the Low Country is a very special place, beautiful. And it's not easy to get to. I mean, that's one of the things I grew up listening to what we call Carolina beach music, and Carolina beach music is just R&B. I mean, it's music out of Philadelphia and Chicago and other places. But what happened was you couldn't get to these beach resorts, and so what went on the jukebox in 1948 never came off. Yeah. And so people grew up listening to the same kinds of music in that era because it was hard to get to. I mean, it's not, you're a long ways from 95. I mean, you have to get over to Litchfield. It's a chore. You got to take back roads to get there.
Yep.
I think
and
that's
it's
what
so
makes
beautiful.
it neat. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love driving through those communities.
I hope we take care of it. I hope we never see, too many big, gigantic condos that ruin the ambience and all that. Well,
amen.
Let's talk about what's next for you. You've had a great career as an agency creature. You had a great career as a corporate creature. I know you're not done. What do you want to do next?
I'm still figuring that out. I still want to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, truthfully. Whatever it is and wherever it is, I'm looking at something that has the intersection of sports and social impact. You started the conversation off with everything that I was doing with the AFC Good Works team. And those are the types of programs, campaigns, affiliations that I'm drawn to and I want to continue doing. Again, it's a win-win-win for everyone involved. And I find that it's more meaningful. And I'm at a point in my career where I get to pick and choose and do something that is truthfully purposeful for me. And that's where I'll find myself. I'm also looking at doing some potential teaching in higher ed. We talked about my background in education, and I've done a ton of guest lecturing at various universities. And that's another area that I think I want to start pursuing.
I think one of the positives that's come out of COVID and come out of George Floyd and come out of a lot of the DEI initiatives is that young people do know they now have a voice.
Yes.
And that they can make a difference. And, if you look at, I love what some of these All-State AFCA Good Works team members have gone on to do with their lives, and the ability to tell young people, you can be part of the solution here. You have a chance to make a real impact on our society. And I think the combination of you having that experience in that area and the ability to communicate like you can do and be able to get young people to understand that there is a chance for us all to be better
No doubt. And sports just gives them that platform to do it.
It does. And now in an
Yes.
NIL world, they might even get paid to do it, which is going to be kind of interesting too. I mean, so I think this new intersection of purpose married to name, image, and likeness opportunities may lead to some really, really big things. Well, I know this. You've had lots of great projects that are now in the rearview mirror, but I know there are more to come. And Pam, I can't thank you enough for being with us today from the
Rick,
bridge.
thank you. Thank you. I cherish our friendship, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, let's get back up on the old soapbox. The word for today is reconciliation. Our associate minister, Steve Gaither, recently wrote a parson-to-person editorial in our church bulletin talking about how the news media seems to be more about dividing us than uniting us. I believe we all need to do more to bring us together than to divide us. Steve quoted the author and theologian Edwin Searcy, who wrote in his book, Feasting on the Word, that, quote, the church is a holy experiment in reconciliation. I believe we need a lot more reconciliation in our society today. We can learn to speak our minds without being so mean-spirited. We human beings are never going to agree on everything, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. See, charity is not only what we give to those less fortunate than ourselves, it's also how we behave towards those who think differently than we do. Let's be more charitable in every sense of the term. And by doing that, we will practice reconciliation. And that's my view. It's time for another On the Road with Rick segment. People are always asking me about my favorite restaurants here in Charleston. Well, one of my very favorites is a local place with very few tourists. It's the Marina Variety Store at the Charleston Marina right on the water. Let's start with breakfast. Breakfast has always been my favorite meal of the day. They've got eggs, grits, sausages, bacon. They even have fried fish for breakfast. My favorite is a seafood omelet with shrimp, scallops, and crab meat, with absolutely perfect grits and local sliced tomatoes. But where they really excel is their fried seafood. I think they make the very best fried seafood in all of Charleston. They fry up local shrimp, flounder, and oysters, fried to perfection without that greasy and heavy aftertaste. Marry that with local vegetables and a big glass of sweet tea, and you have a truly magical meal. So the next time you find yourself in the Holy City, check out the Marina Variety Store. Just don't tell the other tourists. We're out of time today. Thanks to my very special guest, Pam Hollander. Please come back to see us next week from the bridge.